Hello, I'm Lauren Reddington, National Solar Tour Director and Webinar Manager for the American Solar Energy Society. I'd like to thank you all for joining us on our monthly webinar series. To kick off, I would like to inform you of who ASES is and highlight some of our current events and programs. The American Solar Energy Society is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that was established in 1954 and advocates for sustainable living and 100% renewable energy by sharing information, events, and resources to cultivate community and power progress. You can join our community anytime at ases.org/join, and webinar registrants get a special 10% off discount on all ASES memberships except for life memberships by using promo code webinar. Save the date. ASES will be having our 52nd annual National Solar Conference, Solar 2023, Transforming the Energy Landscape for All, in Boulder, Colorado, at the University of Colorado Boulder from August 8th to 11th, 2023. You can learn more about the presentation tracks and check out the visitor's guide at ases.org/conference. The National Solar Tour is a truly effective program for increasing solar adoption and the implementation of sustainable upgrades by featuring a collection of local solar tours, in addition to single solar sites across the country that feature solar and sustainable technologies. This year's National Solar Tour was a success, with solar and sustainability events in all 50 states. The in-person tours have now passed, but you can check out all the virtual tours at nationalsolartour.org/map until January 15th, 2023. ASES also invites you to participate in our online community. This is a space for our community to collaborate, share content and information, and network with each other. We have recently launched our Mentor Match program in our online community in hopes of facilitating mentor and mentee relationships to enhance personal and professional development. Be sure to hop online and start engaging at community.ases.org. Thank you for listening to these ASES updates. I want to note that this webinar will be available in a recorded format soon. I will follow up with everyone once it is available. I will ask that you submit your comments to the chat section and questions to the Q&A section, and we will review and answer everything at the end of the presentation. Now I would like to introduce you to today's presenter, Julia Moravchik. Julia is involved in EV education and policy, green home and beneficial electrification, and sustainability in general. She is the head of the automotive group for Citizens Climate Lobby, the events coordinator for the Denver Electric Vehicle Council, and the Denver Tesla Club, a founder of Go Electric Colorado, the regional business director for Drive-In, a company that gives in-person Tesla training, a volunteer brand ambassador for Aptera, a solar EV company, and works with Drive Electric Colorado, Colterra, and 350 Colorado to educate and legislate for EVs and climate change. Now I will turn it over to Julia.
Okay, thank you for coming. I'm just going to get started here. Share my screen. Okay, so so I'm involved in a lot of different sustainability and EV organizations, and I wanted to kind of call your attention, especially to a new group that me and some other people have started, which is Go Electric Colorado. So basically, we are an organization, we just started this summer, but the purpose of this organization is to help people with home electrification, or help the whole process of home electrification. And one of the things we do is we offer a free home electrification consultation. So we're not paid by anyone or anything like this. So this, if you want someone to come in and kind of assess your home for, whatever, heat pumps, hot water heaters, insulation, this and that, you can send an email to info@goelectriccolorado.com. Okay, so let's talk about solar electric vehicles. So Let's start out by looking at the CO2 emissions of different sectors. So if you notice here, transportation accounts for 1/4 of greenhouse emissions. I think this is a United States graph here. So 25%, if we can get rid of all the emissions, theoretically, of transportation, that's 25% fewer carbon emissions. And then oil and gas account for another 11%. Okay, so let's talk about solar electric vehicles. Okay, I'm going to start out by just kind of introducing you to upcoming solar EVs. So these are all companies that are coming out with solar powered electric vehicles in 2023. The first is Aptera, upper left. So that's an American company. And then the 2 European companies, one is Lightyear and one is Sono. And I'm going to be talking about these in depth in a bit. Okay, so let's start out with what is a solar EV. So there are cars that you can get, sort of more standard ones that have some solar on them that usually power the console or something like that. But I'm defining a solar EV as a EV that has built-in solar panels that can get 1/3 or more of a typical daily drive. So enough to make a difference. However, all of these solar EVs, you can also just simply plug them in like a regular electric vehicle. Okay, so why aren't all EVs solar? I mean, it seems like kind of a no-brainer if you can just stick solar on the EVs and then, you know, don't have to charge as often or don't have to charge at all. Well, so the main reason here is efficiency. So most electric vehicles just simply require too much energy for them to be powered completely or mostly by solar. So a normal solar electric vehicle would need the equivalent of a 20-foot billboard size solar panels. So all these EVs have made great attempts to be more energy efficient. So weight is one thing, so they generally weigh less. They have in-wheel motors, which are lightweight, and you can see a picture of that on the right. So they're just these tiny little motors that are attached to the wheels. And then all of them work really hard at aerodynamics. Aerodynamics accounts for a lot of energy efficiency in an EV or even a normal gas car. And I'll talk about some other ways of getting efficiency as well. Okay, so what are some of the advantages of solar EVs? Well, the obvious one is carbon emissions. So after manufacturing, which has a carbon, embodied carbon emission costs there. After that, they're basically low to zero emissions after manufacturing. So all the carbon emissions, or almost all of them, come just simply from the manufacturing, and then you're scot-free for the life of the car. They can save about approximately 1,400 pounds of carbon per year. And then also the electricity source doesn't matter. So there's some states, Washington, that has very clean electricity. Then there's some states that have very dirty electricity. Colorado is not the worst, but not great. But if you're getting your power for your transportation from the vehicle itself, then it doesn't matter how dirty your electricity source is, because you're not using it most of the time. Okay, so solar powered EVs are also useful for various unique populations. So since generally you don't have to plug them in, you don't have to be tied to an electrical outlet. So apartment dwellers is one example. So this is a real problem with electric vehicles. If you have a garage, it's easy. You usually have a plug there, or you can put in a 240 outlet if you want faster charging. However, if you're in an apartment, you often have no place to charge at home unless your apartment owner is nice enough to put in outlets or chargers. Then there are people in areas of the world that simply just don't have electricity yet. So these people probably would not be able to afford a brand new solar EV at this point, but at some point, this may be how they transport themselves. And then there's certain people who enjoy the off-grid lifestyle. And this is a way of helping that. So yes, you can put solar panels on your house and power your house that way, but this is a way of getting extra energy for your transportation without having to do that. And then there's the zombie apocalypse. Well, we probably won't have a zombie apocalypse, but there may be, tend to be a little bit cynical about climate change. I mean, who knows what's going to happen 20, 30, 40 years from now as far as that. There may be parts of the world where civilization just simply can't keep up with the amount of expense that it costs to fight climate change. But even if you don't want to be quite that cynical, you could have an extended power outage, some sort of thing where you can't actually get electricity for a while. Okay, so let's talk about total cost of ownership here. So I took the average monthly payment for a vehicle now is $677. So let's say you have three kinds of vehicles. You have a gas-powered vehicle, you have an EV, and then you have a solar-powered EV. So your monthly payment is going to be the same there. Maintenance is higher with a gas-powered car than an EV. So maintenance is going to be less for both the EV and the solar EV. Fueling for the gas-powered EV is going to be about $300 a month. It's actually, I made this deck a little while ago. I think it's actually more now. For an EV, the electricity is going to be about $45 on average per month. Solar EV, it's nothing. So basically, once you pay for the car, you don't have to pay for fueling it anymore. So total cost of ownership for a month, for each month, is for the gas-powered car will be $1,044, for the EV $769, and for the solar EV is $725. And a lot of people don't take this into consideration when they're thinking about buying even a regular electric vehicle, that if you're saving, let's say you're saving $250 a month, well, that's $250 extra that you can put into your monthly payment. So you may be able to actually afford more car than you think. If you have an EV. Okay, just a second here. Okay, so let's look at some of these monthly payments here. So this is a different estimate for a monthly payment. So I got this from Carvana. I started out with a Honda Accord, which is a pretty standard vehicle. And it's a good car. But it's the same price about as the Aptera here. So monthly car payments here for three different situations. You buy a Honda Accord, you buy an Aptera for the same price, or you simply give away your gas car and buy an Aptera. So basically this would be, you have a gas car, you don't even sell it, you just simply give it away. And so for your total for a Honda Accord, it would be $836. For an Aptera, it would be $516. Now, what you can see from this is that if you the amount of savings that you have by giving away your gas car and not having to pay for this maintenance and this fuel means that after all that, you're only paying $149 per month for your Aptera. Okay, I don't know why this is so slow here. Okay, hopefully I didn't miss any slides here. Okay, so here's another advantage of solar EVs is that they will help the grid. So as you all probably know, in order to switch to carbon-free electricity, you have to build new electricity sources. So we not only have to build electricity sources because we want them to be clean, But we also have to increase the amount of electricity because we're going to be electrifying transportation and we're going to be electrifying buildings. So this is a big challenge for our country and for utilities to build as quickly as they can. And the danger here is that we might get to the point, if they aren't on top of it, we may get to the point where our transportation and our building requirements are outpacing the amount of energy that they're building. So solar EVs will help that, in that transportation at least doesn't weigh into this. So there's not as much pressure to build these to build electricity as quickly. Okay, so here's another advantage, and that is range at highway speed. So there's a little secret, I suppose you could call it, about EVs, is that they actually have their best range at about 25 to 30 miles per hour, as opposed to gas cars, which have their best range at about 55 to 60 miles per hour. And the problem with that really is that you're more concerned about range at the highway speeds, because that's when you want to go on road trips. So I mean, it's an advantage to have good range at 25 to 30 because it makes for a nice town car, but you also don't want too much degradation at highway speeds because you have to stop and charge. So the solar EV range does not degrade as much at highway speeds. And the reason is because they work so hard at aerodynamics, they don't have as much wind resistance. And wind resistance is what slows vehicles or makes vehicles less efficient at highway speeds. So they will actually do better on highways than or fast speeds than regular EVs do. Okay, so let's talk about the three solar EVs that I presented earlier. So the first one is Aptera. So this is a company that is in San Diego. So they have this vehicle. It looks pretty crazy, and all of that basically is efficiency and aerodynamics. It looks like they're trying to make some cool futuristic vehicle, but really what they did was they started with software that measures coefficient of drag, which is the measure of aerodynamics, and they played with it until they found the ideal shape for aerodynamics, and then they built their car around it. So that's why it's sort of this weird shape. It looks like a dolphin or a plane with no wings or something, because both dolphins and planes have to deal with aerodynamics. It's very inexpensive, even for a regular electric vehicle. It starts at $25,900 and goes up. It has different ranges depending on the batteries, and the highest range is 1,000 miles, which is crazy. So you could easily drive all day without having to stop and charge at a public charger. And you can see in this map, this is basically what 1,000 miles looks like in the United States. So you can drive these routes here without having to charge at all. It gets about 30 to 50 miles a day from solar. Probably in Colorado, it gets about 40 to 50 most of the time. So the average driver, for comparison, drives about 30 to 35 miles. So theoretically, you could actually buy this vehicle and never plug it in. So here are the battery sizes. And this, if you don't know a lot about EVs, this may not mean a lot to you. But it shows the efficiency. So for example, the 1,000-mile range one is 100 kilowatt hour battery. Now there are EVs out there right now that have 100 kilowatt hour batteries. They don't get anything near 1,000 miles. A Tesla Model 3, which is about the most efficient EV you can get, has about a 60, little bit more kilowatt hour battery, and it'll get the standard range, which has about 60 to 65, will get 250 miles. So you can see that that this Aptera is much more efficient than what we have so far. It's very quick, so it's 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds, which will knock you back in your seat and make a smile on your face. It has a top speed of 110 miles an hour, so that's more than anyone needs. It's not a race car, but it's enough for driving around. And because it's so efficient, it actually charges very quickly. So on 110 volt outlet, so this is the same outlet that you plug your toaster into, it'll get 13 miles an hour. Now an average EV will get like 4 or 5 or so. So you can see you can actually, you don't really even have to have a 240 outlet installed in your garage like a lot of people do with EVs. You can just rely on the outlet that's probably already there in your house, in your garage. And then if you want to go on a road trip, the kinds of chargers, DC fast chargers they're called, that are on road trips, you will get 100 miles per hour, or sorry, 500 miles per hour. So you know, you can be there for you know, half hour and be fine. Okay, so I'm gonna play this video about the Aptera.
And now, today, expecting sunny skies. Back.
Okay, so a few things I want to say about the Aptera. So I talked about the efficiency. So it's about 3 times as efficient as a Tesla Model 3, which is the most efficient EV out there. 0.13 coefficient of drag probably means nothing to you, but very aerodynamic. Here's a cool factoid. It's actually more aerodynamic than an F-150 mirror. So there will be less air molecules hitting your Aptera than an F-150, the side mirror on an F-150. It has 3 wheels, as you could tell from the video, and that produces less rolling resistance. So you actually get less friction, which is another reason why it's so efficient. However, I do want to say it is a full-size vehicle. So it does only seat 2 people. But it's as big as a regular car, and with a huge, at least hugely long, long trunk. It weighs 1,800 pounds, which is not much for a car. Cars are usually twice that much at least, or 3 times as much. So one of the reasons why it weighs so little is that it's not made out of steel or aluminum like most vehicles. It's made out of this rosin-filled sandwich composite that race cars and boats and things are made out of. It's extremely hard. They also have this thing called skin cooling. So in order to cool the vehicle for you, so your air conditioning, they have a very efficient thing called skin cooling, where the body of the car has little pores that where cool air will come out of. Okay, so safety. A lot of times people sort of look at the Aptera and it kind of doesn't look safe to them. So I want to talk a little bit about this. It does have advanced driver assistance, so it will do lane keeping and things like this. I told you about the exterior, and it is 7 times stronger than steel. So if you get into an accident with this vehicle, it's not going to impact inside the cab. So you're not going to get sort of crushed into in the accident. But it still has crumple zones. So that's something people are concerned about when there's a very strong material used for a car. Well, okay, will it have crumple zones? Well, it does. So they built that into it. Plus, this composite, unlike steel, aluminum, it's flexible. So if you get in an accident, it will flex in and take the energy of the impact and then bounce out again. So because it has 3 wheels, it's actually legally considered a motorcycle or an autocycle. So what that means is that the safety standards are less for it because they're just simply less for autocycles, motorcycles. However, Aptera said that instead of passing the 30 safety standards that a motorcycle has to pass, it actually will pass all 500 safety standards that the National Highway Transport Safety Association has for regular vehicles, regular cars. Another thing people kind of worry about is, well, if it weighs so little, what happens if there's a cross breeze? Will it get blown off the road? It's actually aerodynamic from all sides. So the wind will just simply slip over it just like it does from the front. Another thing people are worried about sometimes is if it's three wheels, will it tip over? There have been some kind of notorious 3-wheeled vehicles in the past that would tip over fairly easily, but they had their single wheel in the front and the 2 wheels in the back, and that is not a very stable design. However, the Aptera is the opposite. And you can see on the pictures on the right here, this is what's called a moose test. So basically they put cones out so that the vehicle has to sort of move back and forth, sort of in an S shape or a zigzag shape. And the reason it's called a moose test is the idea is that you're driving along and there's suddenly a moose in the way and you have to kind of go around it. So SUVs and pickups and stuff are sort of notorious for doing very badly on the moose test, but the Aptera has been tested and does extremely well with the moose test, partly because the battery, like most EVs, is at the bottom of the car, so it makes it very stable. Okay, so the interior, so it has heated and cooled seats. It has a camera rear mirror, which you can do because it's technically a motorcycle. And the screen in the front will also display the side mirrors. So you've got great visibility, and there's enough room for tall people as well. Okay, so I'm actually an Aptera brand ambassador, which is a volunteer thing. I just love the company though, and I'm hoping that solar EVs will be the future of transportation. So anyway, if you want to order one, it's $70 refundable with my referral code, which I'll put at the end. And I've ordered one, needless to say, but I already have 2 EVs and I can't really afford to have an EV collection. So I'm not entirely sure that I will do it, but basically, you know, with a refundable deposit, it doesn't really matter. I can just get it back. Okay, so let's talk about the Lightyear. So this is a vehicle that is made in the Netherlands, or is going to be. All 3 of these are coming out next year. It is not for. It is quite expensive at this point. Almost over $250,000. However, the future cars will be $34,000. So Lightyear is doing what a lot of early EV companies do, which is it costs a lot of money to create a new automaker. Factories, creating the car, all the parts, supplies, etc. So a lot of new EV companies will sell their first car as a luxury vehicle at a high price. And that's to kind of recoup at least some of the costs that they put into R&D and manufacturing and things like that. And then they kind of come down in price. So this is pretty standard. It has a 390-mile range, which is very good. It will get 40 to 45 miles a day from solar. Once again, that's more than the average person drives. It's 3,500 pounds, which is still less than a regular car. And EVs tend to weigh more because they have batteries, and batteries are fairly heavy. 60 kilowatt hour battery, 100 miles per hour top speed, which is still good. Most people don't go over 100 miles an hour. And it's made in the Netherlands. So let's watch a video on this. Okay, so how does it get to be so efficient? Well, it has a very good coefficient of drag as well. You can kind of see by the shape of these vehicles that they're aerodynamic. So aerodynamic shapes tend to be sort of teardrop shaped, so sideways teardrop shaped. And the advantage of that shape is the air kind of sort of slips around the car. It doesn't get caught up in it and create eddies, which is produces bad aerodynamics. You can see the rear tire is, or rear wheel is covered, and that's another way. So the air doesn't kind of get sucked in there and kind of push against the car. It has a carbon fiber body. So once again, low weight there, aerodynamic shape and the in-wheel motors, which I talked about before. Okay, so right now the Lightyear is only available in Europe. If you have any European friends who have a lot of money, you can send them this link and they can pre-order their Lightyear. And I'll put these all these links in the chat at the end of this. Okay, so let's talk about the Sonos Sion. So this is a German vehicle. It is inexpensive, so it's $30,000. It's a more of a true vehicle than the Aptera in the sense that it has 4 wheels. It has a 190-mile range, which isn't great, but it's adequate for most people. It has this interesting thing where it has software that will tell you the ideal positioning for solar. So if you're parking your vehicle, it will tell you what the best angle to park it in order to get the best solar. It gets about 10 to 20 miles per day with its solar panels, which isn't as much as the other two. However, this was for Munich, which is quite north, so I'm not sure how it would do in Colorado. I'm sure it would do better. It has a 54 kilowatt hour battery with battery chemistry that's supposed to last 1 million miles. It has an 87 mile per hour top speed, which is getting kind of low there. You might want a little bit more in case you have to like zip around someone. It has this cool thing where the customer can actually 3D print replacement parts. So if you, I don't know, your bumper or something gets squished, you can actually 3D print a new bumper and then have a local mechanic put it on with instructions from Sono. Okay, so let's take a look at this one.
Sono Motors is on a pioneering mission to accelerate the revolution of mobility by making every vehicle solar. Its disruptive solar technology has been developed to enable seamless integration into all types of vehicles to reduce the impact of CO2 emissions and pave the way for climate-friendly mobility. The Sion, our passion project, is where this all started. The first solar electric vehicle for the masses. So when we talk about a solar electric vehicle, or SEV, what exactly do we mean? Well, the Sion's entire body is covered in integrated solar cells that generate additional range for the car's 54 kilowatt-hour battery via the power of the sun, no matter if parked or driving. These monocrystalline silicon cells can generate an average of 112 kilometers of extra range per week. Our light and robust solar modules are able to produce energy even in cloudy conditions or in winter. This means that the Sion can be fully self-sufficient on short trips and makes it the car that charges itself. Thanks to the additional range generated by the sun, the average commuter in German metropolitan areas needs to charge an average of 4 times less in comparison to other conventional electric vehicles with the same battery and consumption. You have multiple options when charging the Sion. For example, at any public charging station in Europe, at your home via your regular power socket, or even from another Sion. But that's another story.
Okay, so I'm sure the burning question that everyone has in their mind after seeing that video is, what is that green stuff? So they have this sort of cool thing that they did where they actually put moss in the car as part of the air filtration. So this moss sort of sits there as a little pet in your car, kind of, and it will help filter the air. It doesn't do it completely, but it helps filter the air, and it also provides humidity. And then when you get your car maintained or something, they can just take out that moss and put in more moss. So anyway, it's a cute little feature. It has adjustable ambient LED lighting, and it seats 5, unlike the Aptera, which unfortunately is only good for a 2-person household. Okay, so the Sion has this interesting thing where they some other EVs do this too, but they have power sharing, so you can use it to power tools or charge other cars, power your home in case of a or at least appliances in your home in case of a power outage. And then they also have this interesting idea about ride sharing. So part of the app that comes with it will allow you to give the car to other people for ride sharing. So you can basically park your car, go off and do something or whatever, and then someone can just come up, apply for, wanting to use your car. And then they can either drive it or they can use it as a portable charger. So it's sort of cool that there's this car that's basically a solar powered battery that can be driven wherever. So that's kind of a cool idea that they have. Okay, so right now it's only available in Europe, but just 2 months ago, they actually came and did a tour of the United States. Unfortunately, they didn't come to Denver, or else I would have gone racing over there. But they toured the US, and they're planning to come to the United States. They haven't said exactly when. So you can pre-order this as well. I'm not sure what the payment is, but okay. So let's talk about the future of solar electric vehicles. So it's something that I have great hopes for. So my hope is that these 3 companies are kind of a proof of concept. So most, especially traditional automakers, don't really like to be innovative because it's a risk for them. They could lose a lot of money. It's not really part of their culture to be innovative. But if these vehicles actually, turn out to be something that the public likes, that's something that is working really well, doesn't have downsides, I think that this will take off in the automotive industry. And then as technology improves, it'll be more feasible for more vehicles. So this depends on two things. First of all, solar efficiency increasing, and as you probably know, solar efficiency is getting better and better each year. And then also battery efficiency is increasing each year as well. So if you look at the efficiency of batteries, EV batteries over time, every year, pretty much it's getting better and better. So the combination of those two things will mean that you'll get more energy, but you'll need less energy. So the future is bright, I think, for solar powered EVs. Okay. So if anyone has questions, or there may be some in the chat as well.
Yeah, let's start with the Q&A and then we can move to the chat if that's okay with you. So Drew Gilla asks, is 20-foot billboard 3 kilowatts?
Well, it would be more than that, the 20-foot billboard, I mean, the analogy, because it would have to, well, 3, yeah. I'm not sure. I don't think I could do that calculation. Sorry about that.
And then comment and question from Batu. Hi, Julia. Thank you for presenting a very interesting subject. I would like to know more about wheel motors. Are they different than BEVs? Because they are very vulnerable to outside effects in BEVs.
Yeah, so most battery electric vehicles do not have in-wheel motors. It's a new technology, so it may be something that comes with time. Most EVs have the motor is sort of above the axle generally, and so it'll kind of turn 2 wheels at a time. So there's usually like a front one and a back one. But regular EVs are moving more towards having not just 2 motors, but actually having 3 or 4 motors as well. But they still kind of aren't in-wheel motors. Now, I think from that question there was sort of a concern: does that make them vulnerable? So will they be vulnerable to damage? And I know that they test them really well for this, and it seems like they actually are pretty well protected.
And then another question from Batu. Giveaway gas car option is very important for replacing ICEs. How does its procedures work? What is the plan for gas cars taken by this option?
Well, I mean, it was kind of more of a thought experiment. I mean, if you really did have a perfectly good gas-powered vehicle, you'd probably sell it or trade it in for a solar electric vehicle. But it's not going to be very long before if you have a gas-powered vehicle, before the residual value, which basically means how much it's worth if you want to sell it, it goes down quite quickly. So new technology tends to be adopted in kind of an S-shaped curve. So it starts out with the early adopters, and no one seems to be doing it, and then suddenly it goes like way up, and then at the very end it kind of is an S, because there's certain people that are just resistant to doing some new thing. They still don't have smartphones and stuff like that. And if you look at Norway, so Norway's a great example of the future of adoption of electric vehicles, because right now the percentage of new cars that are fully electric is about 90% now, almost. So they are way ahead of everybody else as far as adoption. And what's happening there is that it's getting very difficult for people to sell their used gas cars because nobody wants them. Now, Norway sort of has the advantage that they can just take those gas cars and ship them to somewhere else in the EU. But once the whole world is going electric, then who are you going to sell your gas car to? So suddenly the value of your gas car will get very low, especially since it costs so much to fuel. And gas stations will probably stop, there won't be as many gas stations, it'll be difficult to fuel. So there is a danger. When I have friends who want to buy a new vehicle, I just say, don't buy a new gas car. If you want a gas car, buy a used gas car, because if you buy a new one, its resale value is going to be almost nothing. So eventually cars may get to the point where you can't sell. I mean, you might as well just throw it off a cliff. So.
And Elise asks, how does weather affect electricity availability?
Oh, as far as the solar, that's a good question. I think these solar panels, and I don't have statistics on that, it would be nice. But I think it was the Sono that said that video we saw, it was saying that it works in all weather. And I know Aptera has kind of hinted at that too. So I think that the solar panels they use are less affected by cloud cover and things like that. I mean, my guess is if it's a heavy rainstorm, you probably aren't going to be getting too much. But you can always plug it in if it goes for a long time with if there's rain for a long time.
And another question here from Batu, re Aptera. What is the material used in the car? Is it counted as a car or bicycle due to it having 3 wheels?
Yeah, so the material, they don't say exactly what it is. I think it's probably patented, but it's some kind of composite. I think it's similar to carbon fiber, but sort of in the same family. One of the founders there used to own a boating company. So he's taken a lot of sort of ideas and technologies from boating and put them in the car. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure what the composition is. And then what was the second half of the question? Sorry.
Sorry, let me get back to it. I think you covered it. Just asking if it would be considered a bicycle or a car. So 3 wheels,
Yeah, so it is technically a motorcycle, and motorcycles include something called autocycles, which are basically 3-wheeled automobiles. But since there's so few 3-wheeled automobiles, I mean, there's the slingshot. There's just not very many of them. The government just tends to kind of lump them in with motorcycles, which is not. It has some disadvantages, like Aptera had to work hard to make it so that people didn't have to wear a motorcycle helmet in their car and stuff like that. So it's kind of a weird category there. But the advantage of that is that motorcycles have some advantages. So I think it costs less to for whatever, not a license, but registration costs less, insurance costs less, things like that. So you do get some advantages with it being a motorcycle.
Awesome. And Susan asks, SAE or CHAdeMO for DC fast charge?
Good question. So Aptera is actually trying to get the Tesla charger. So that's what they're probably going to be using. And the advantage there is the fast charging of Tesla is really better than anyone else's. And Tesla's sort of opening up its chargers and letting anyone, for free, whatever, put them in their cars now. So they're trying to kind of make it a standard. But a lot of the reason why a lot of people buy Tesla cars is for the charging system. So Aptera will have that advantage of having the Tesla ones. The other two are made in Europe, and the EU has a standard that everyone has to follow, and it's not a design that occurs here. So it's CCS, but it's not our CCS. It's a different CCS. So when they come here, they'll have to decide what they're going to use. Probably not CHAdeMO though, because even the only EV that uses CHAdeMO is the Leaf, and Nissan is actually phasing that out. So I have a Leaf, by the way. So.
And comment and question here from Adam. He works with a lot of people who make relatively low incomes. These folks, by and large, aren't even thinking about EVs, not even a little. If they have a car, it has to be one that costs the least today, even if over a period of time another car is cheaper. But EVs aren't even a thought for them. Yet, how might Aptera, a surprisingly affordable car, and other solar EV companies work to make their products available to low-income people?
Yeah, I mean, I think that will happen naturally as they with economies of scale. So, these are small companies; they're just starting up, so they have to kind of overprice it at this point. But electric vehicles in general have kind of the reputation of being expensive, and it's partly because they're expensive, but they're not as expensive as people think. Some of them are expensive, and those are kind of the ones that kind of get famous. And like I said in the talk, a lot of the reason is because companies, whether they're startups or traditional automakers, will start with kind of the high end one. And the reason is they have to make the money back for their research and development and things like that. However, if you look at China, so China has a lot of EV companies, automakers, and China has kind of saw the future before any of the rest of us did. So they were working on making EVs like 10 years ago, and the government was supporting them quite a bit. So they basically have, they already did all their R&D. They already spent all their R&D a long time ago. So some of their EVs are cheap, and some of them are incredibly cheap. So the best-selling EV is generally the Tesla Model 3 worldwide, but occasionally it switches places with a car called the Wuling Hongguang. It's obviously a Chinese car. It's actually owned, a third of it is owned by GM, but in general, it's a Chinese car. It costs, I hope everyone's sitting down or else you'll keel over. It costs $4,500. So this is the future of EVs. Once we get the R&D paid off, and once battery costs go down, which they are, EVs are going to be a lot cheaper than gas cars. And they're also, for low-income people, they're better in other ways as well. So they have less maintenance. And then they don't, as they get older, they don't break down as much. So a low income person, the shock of having $1,000 repair on an old car that they can afford is huge, because they don't have an extra $1,000 that they can use to fix their car. So EVs are actually, we have to wait. We have to wait out the process. But once they're established and the used ones sort of come down in price and the inexpensive ones get made, they're actually going to be a great boon for low-income people.
And Mike asks, any update on Fed requirement to have external mirrors on the Aptera?
I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, I'm not sure about the latest. I Originally, since they are a motorcycle, they don't have to have that. But I don't know. I don't know what the latest is.
And Tala asks, you mentioned degradation of 112 kilometers per week. Should this figure into the cost? To replace the battery on our Leaf is 5,000 to 8,000 at the dealer.
Yeah, so battery replacements in EVs is a topic that comes out often. So I have a I have two EVs. I've got a 2014 Leaf and I have a newer Tesla Model 3. The Leaf is sort of an exception with battery degradation, and it actually degrades faster than most EVs. And the reason for this is that Nissan, for some unknown reason, decided that they wouldn't put in what's called active battery management. And that's basically means batteries like to be at a certain temperature. If you have them at too high of a temperature, especially, they'll degrade faster. And Nissan does not put in the coolant and software and things like that to manage the temperature of its battery. It has what is euphemistically called air-cooled batteries, which basically means, you know, there's air coming in through a vent and it's supposed to cool the batteries. So Nissan Leafs, their batteries tend to degrade fairly quickly. So that's one thing. And then also in general, EV batteries are just getting better and better with time. So my Tesla actually has a new kind of battery chemistry called, it's lithium iron phosphate. So most basically all other EVs, I think in the United States, are a nickel cobalt chemistry. And one of the advantages of the lithium iron phosphate is it lasts an incredibly long time. So when they do factory testing, it seems like it's going to last from 1 million to 2 million miles. And 1 million miles, if you drive the average, what the average American drives is like 66 years. So, you know, it would outlast you. Batteries are also, by law, they have to be warranted for at least 8 years and 100,000 miles, 120,000 miles. So even if you're Aptera or whatever EV you get, even if the battery for some reason is flawed or, you know, degrades too fast, then you'll get it replaced under warranty for at least the first 8 years.
Great. And Andrew asks, can you speak to autonomous vehicles and shared vehicles like Lime scooters?
Yeah, I mean, I have a whole presentation on basically, well, my presentation is on the future of public transportation, which I think will be tiny autonomous pods, hopefully solar powered. I think people, I mean, if we can crack autonomy, which is a difficult problem, then there won't be car ownership anymore. I mean, there'll be some, just like people own horses now, but in general, it will be a lot more cost effective and convenient for people to simply order a autonomous vehicle to come to their house. You know, it's right size for the ride. So if it's one person, it's just one little thing. You don't have to have these big, huge cars that drive around that can hold 5 people when usually there'll just be one person and no cargo. So yeah, I mean, I think that will be the future of transportation if we can crack autonomy to the point where, you know, vehicles can just go anywhere. I mean, there are some autonomous vehicle companies, but they're very geo constrained, so they only work in. They basically map the roads in a little area to like within a millimeter or something like that, and then feed it to the car. So the car is sort of like it's on invisible rails. So all it has to do is kind of avoid people and cars and stuff like that. And we need something better if we're going to really crack the autonomy, but that could be pretty amazing. I mean, it's not just that people won't have vehicles. I mean, if you can imagine what cities would look like without parking lots, without driveways, I mean, they'll just simply completely open up.
Great. Well, it looks like we're at time. But if it's okay with you, Julia, I would encourage all attendees here to reach out to your email with any additional questions. I'll also include your email in my follow-up email with the recording of this webinar. So thank you so much, Julia, for your fantastic presentation. And thank you all for joining us for this month's webinar. I hope to see you all next month for our January webinar. I hope you have a great day.